Yes, ma'am, we can start the Zulu. We are live on YouTube.
All right. So welcome back, everybody. And now we'll be beginning with the fifth year of jury. The six finalists from fifth year will be presenting live. And the first one is number 269. 269, go ahead. Stage is yours.
Thank you. So initially, I'll talk about my manifestation of architecture. I think about architecture a lot. My architecture journey gave me an eye to analyze everything from multiple viewpoints at a user level, the spectator level, and a designer level. Visiting ramifications of destruction with a team of students to design flood-resistant economical homes pushed me to make an impact through my professional studies. Even though I was not cognizant of the passion I developed, I am grateful for the opportunity to learn the architecture of empowerment. It turned out to be a seminal experience, realizing direct impact was made through architecture on communities. Architecture is a power, a statement for users. I intend to empower people to expand their horizons, capture new opportunities, and exercise greater degrees of freedom and choice. The interplay of built environment, vitality, and social cohesion is what creates strong, resilient communities. I implement strategies with architecture and people as a single entity. My design presents itself as a life of the community. The harmony and the people populating the space creates an active beacon, adding activity and color in an environment. Love of innovative ideas, creative thinking, and tangible effects of social and cultural vitality by connecting the most intelligent, active researchers with a wide source of new knowledge. I developed my project as an exploration of connections to revitalize and integrate the area and surroundings. I believe that the community participation and engagement is the crux of my design process. Therefore, the approach to public settings involving local stakeholders and the functional experience of users to create something humane and lively is what pushes me to explore the dichotomy of design, form, and function. Moving on to my project. The project that I have developed is the Student Center. It is located at Karivattam campus, and the campus belongs to Kerala University. So initially, this is a hypothetical project that was developed. The master plan of the Karivattam campus is live. Initially, I identified what were the concerns in the campus. So in order to foster a strong, active student community and diversity, to assist the Kerala University to upgrade the Karivattam campus as a center of excellence, and to use the advantage of the location of SEZ near the Technopark campus to increase collaboration of students, academicians, researchers with the industry. The need to convert the vehicular-friendly campus to a pedestrian-friendly campus. And in this project, in this campus, there are many abandoned locations which have become a den of antisocial activities, and to cater to various student needs to balance health and work life. So these were the problems that were identified in the campus, and the objective was to connect the students with one another in a dynamic setting and to develop a space for inter-college programs as a nodal campus for Kerala University, and to create an evidence that student recreation spaces will impact the student learning outcomes and the employability success. So the project I've developed is a student center. It's like a community center for the Kerala University. It's a campus of 530 acres. And the aim is to develop it as a socially engaging hub with landscape strategies to improve the social spaces. So these are the four elements of my design: the common spaces, fitness and health, recreation, and academic innovation. The campus is located in, the campus is located at Karivattam in Kerala. And with my study of the site, I have chosen the South Campus as my location. This campus has two areas, so the North and the South Campus. So this is the site that I've chosen from my survey studies at the campus. And it is located at a dip of 2 to 3 kilometers from the surrounding areas, which makes it highly visible from the surroundings. These are the surrounding environments. So the campus is actually an organic, it was developed organically. There is a major axis running through the site and a minor axis. So it sort of developed gradually as a urban development. So I have studied in detail about the site, and then I have selected a walkable distance to be created from the surrounding areas of 10 minutes, and that is how I have chosen my site. Then I have done case studies of various students and activity recreation centers, and I created a criteria by which I can analyze which is the location that has to be chosen and how the zoning and all these criteria can be implemented in the project. And a direct survey was done with the students of the campus to identify what is lacking in the campus. This is the design context of the design in context. So this is a huge campus and there is a lot of potential. So I have demarcated the areas that can be used for future developments, and I have divided the campus into zones, by which I have introduced dual entries in the campus, and this is the minor axis which is not active. Therefore, in order to make the campus active, I have enhanced the main entry and to create a landmark of this landmark at this junction of area to create a sense of arrival. And that is where I have placed my student center. The other elements of incubation center and fitness center comes below, depending upon the site context, because it's a contoured site and I wanted it parallel to it. The theater space is separated from it because there are multiple kinds of users coming into the campus, even tourists, students, alumni, faculty, etc. So I wanted to create that kind of a separation in access. That is how I have developed a zoning of the master plan. And to create a diagonal space that can, this is the residential area of the campus and this is the academic area. So my idea was to create a diagonal connection such that a detour can be created from the residential area to the academic area without having to access the axis. So they can walk through a landscaped area that are connecting with various recreation activities before and afterward. This was the design development of the existing road, the proposed internal paths, the built forms, the circulation spaces, the gathering locations. And in this master plan, this is the student center, the location of the student center, an incubation center, a fitness center, and the theater spaces connected with it. Because there is a, like I mentioned, that the campus was not safe before, and especially because there's a Technopark campus beside it, and the life of the Technopark campus had to be imbibed into this campus also. So I have created a design matrix by which I zoned it. This is an axonometric view of the student center, which is seen upon arrival at from the entry of the campus. And I had divided the spaces into formal and informal spaces with a recreation space connecting in between. And if you in this diagram, I have shown what are the activity spaces that are flowing from interior to the exterior spaces, and that's what I intend to show from this diagram. And the structural components were detailed. As seen here, a glulam timber was used to create this curved structure. And even at the top of the, on the upper floors, I have divided it into formal and informal spaces, and the other theater spaces and were created as an black box theater and a large auditorium with common backstage areas were created so that it is accessible for the students as well as the users who are coming from outside. This plans show the fitness center, and in that a multi-activity center was created because the flexibility of spaces was of much importance for student communities rather than creating a specific a place. So rather than that, I have dedicated a space that can be used for multi-purpose activities. And in this, this is the diagram that represents the life of the campus that I envisaged in my project. In this page, I intend to show the tactical landscape strategies that I have implemented. So the first one was the creation of a promenade. As I mentioned in the site analysis sheet, the site is contoured below. So I wanted to develop a promenade in a way that the building is seen as they walk down from the academic areas and they walk down from the residential areas, and all the usable spaces and were arranged around it. And a view from the cafe courtyard reveals the complexity of life in the student center with sequence of spaces. The cafe courtyard and collaborative center of incubation cell flanking the walkway from the exhibition area to the theater. The people populating the space is creating a beacon and active at day and night, adding color and activity in a gray campus. And this is the needed symbol of ambitious future and progress in creating a dynamic center of campus life. Thank you.
Bang on time, 2:69. Now may I request the jury members to give their comments or ask questions.
So this is your thesis project, right? Is this?
Yes, ma'am, this is my thesis project.
Thesis project. So you have created this program, right, on your own?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I guess I think that's true. I mean, certain community activities like this, like a student center, it's a very American university concept, which is missing in our Indian universities, where there is a public space, recreational activity space created for students to do other than, academics. So I think that's I mean, it is missing. So you kind of looked at that and you have identified that. And I think your idea of creating and people walking not on the thing and through the landscape, which you've done, is nice. And if I'm right, you have what you showed, those blue buildings, all 4 buildings you have created, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, I mean, right, because I actually saw, am I only seeing these 2 buildings, which I understood? I don't know about the other buildings. My comment here, I felt, was when I looked at the thing, and my question here is this, that this building does not have auditorium, right? This building has more meeting spaces on the top, right?
On the top, no, ma'am.
This building, like what I see, I'm sorry, if I mean, just a question, this building.
Yes, ma'am. This building, not on the top, ma'am. I have created it at 3 levels. And on
but I see it's more meeting areas only on the top, right?
Ma'am, there is a debating chamber, and the gathering spaces are all created at the top. So even if it's a student learning area, because what I thought about is that a cafe space that should be open 24/7.
So it's not an auditorium, correct? It's not an auditorium.
No, ma'am.
So I just felt that your ground floor is very permeable and see-through, but somehow I think you've created this beautiful plaza, and I thought that maybe you got carried away with this form, what you've done, and somehow lost the connection of the upper 2 floors cafeteria with this thing. Why? I mean, what was the reason for doing that?
The main reason I chose to create that permeability in the ground space is that I wanted people to walk in. Like, the design context idea was that I wanted to have no boundaries between these spaces. That is mainly the student center and incubation center and fitness center. I wanted it to be completely open, which I tried to implement in the plan. But on the top spaces, I wanted it to be more formal, and it didn't need to have the visibility from the ground level. That is why the vertical zoning is created in such a way that those areas, which especially the learning areas, the areas where people collaborate, I didn't want those areas to be seen at the ground level. That is why I have zoned it at the top. Other than that, all the informal spaces, the activity spaces are what I planned at the ground level.
Well, that's perfectly fine. But all other spaces, which were learning spaces and not an auditorium like a black box, I'm just wondering, why create such a strong, a completely blocked facade where you're not connected to the outside. That's all. And to a beautiful plaza which you've created in front. Even if it's a learning space, it's a gathering space, it's a seminar hall, still we are actually looking at, this buzzing, like you want to see this buzz, like, oh, there are students meeting outside classes, doing all this. But suddenly this student center has become more monumental form than being where I see the activity. Otherwise, below is yes. So I'm just, that was my question, but I think that's.
Yeah, overall, I'm not understanding how I can understand your planning, which has come through a lot of processes, but how did you come up with the form was a question that even I wanted to ask.
Sure, ma'am.
Because
yeah.
as much as you want to see from inside out, you also want to see from outside in and see the buzz inside at the same time.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, only one side of the area is opaque. The other sides are actually
There is one
open.
more on the other side.
Yes, ma'am. I will show you a different render. I hope I have placed it here. Two sides I have closed because of climatic reasons. I didn't, because it's going to a very top level. I didn't want the study spaces to be directly affected by the sun. That is why I give one space as open. The other areas are actually visible from the ground level. I have given a proper facade with protection of sun on the other sides. So I think this is the reason I have blocked out that side.
Okay. So another question was the whole idea, since it's a contoured site, how is accessibility a part that has been looked at in this whole project?
Definitely. The main, actually, accessibility was one of my main ideas that I had to focus on because it's a contoured site. And I have, in the plan itself, I have created ramps by which all three buildings on this side are connected by ramp. Those who can access the other areas through the landscape and steps, I have given it through the promenade spaces. So if you can see in this axonometric view, all these three buildings are connected, and in the plan, it is connected through ramp spaces externally.
Okay. And what happens to the residual space between the building at the bottom left, and what happens on the central open space, which is white?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, this is actually, I have created it as two levels. One is an upper plaza and this is the lower plaza.
Okay.
And
okay.
that is extending to an open air theater because it will be an extension of this theater space, which is located interior. And that will be extending outwards into the open area. So this one.
Oh, you said it's an open area theater or open area?
This, ma'am. This is an open theater, ma'am. And this 90, that is the interior space. Yeah. The other one is a playground that is actually existing, and it is accessible from the residential quarters and from the academic area.
Okay, so seems like 269, you have a lot to note, but yeah, you did really well. So moving on to the next participant, next shortlisted, that is 43.
Hello.
43. Yeah, you may leave the room.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Are you here? We can. Yeah.
So these are all thesis projects, right?
No, these are fifth year category.
Not necessarily thesis. So it might be like a group project also? No, it has to be individual project.
As per rules, they were allowed only individual projects. So, but it could be other than thesis works as well.
Okay.
Can I start?
Yeah, please.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Warm regards to the jury members. To begin with, I would like to quote Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. Today, I'm going to talk about the road that I traveled. The past year was filled with explorations and many experiences. I started my year with an internship with Intact Pune chapter. I was always fascinated by heritage, and this internship was an opportunity to work closely with heritage and heritage enthusiasts. It made me more empathetic towards heritage, because of which I was able to determine my thesis topic. I clubbed my interests of heritage and urban design and set on to the journey of working on a heritage urban himself. The intersection of the two led me to my thesis topic, Meluha, Heritage Corridor at Kashi Vishwanath Temple. The process of thesis was a long and arduous journey. The thesis journey was divided into 8 parts. It started with understanding of heritage and the need to conserve it, which was achieved through literature reviews. Following which, I explored how is heritage defined in India. Various issues and solutions with regards to conservation of Indian heritage were also identified. The next stage included analyzing case studies that helped in taking design decisions. The subsequent phase involved understanding the city of Varanasi and the site which needed such a proposal. Once the site was finalized, multiple facets of the sites were explored. I would like to take you through the various milestones of my thesis journey. The first milestone was synthesizing the Ghat activities. The edge of the Ganga River at Varanasi has about 84 ghats. These ghats nurture several activities that needed to be addressed. So I documented the various activities happening through the day, and it was understood through these sections. The next phase of the journey was the design process. This phase consisted of understanding the stakeholders involved, the activity space analysis and justification, ultimately leading to the design brief, zoning segregation plan, and detailed drawings. The activity space analysis justification was created to understand the users and their expectations. The users of this space would be tourists, students, pilgrims, researchers, shop owners and hawkers, pundits, and residents of the city. The project brief. To cater to the above mentioned users, the spaces required are museum, Hriday Center, Dharamshala, Tourist Information Center, the Bhavan, and the market area. The objective of the design was to solve the issue of the extremely narrow street, which is currently only 1.2 meter in width, as well as rejuvenating the connection between the Kashi Vishwanath temple and the river Ganga. Once the aims and objectives were clear, various stages of design development were worked on. This is represented through a small video. The Tourist Information Desk, the museum, the Hriday Center, the Dharamshala, the Bhavan, the market spaces, congregation areas, and changing rooms. The ground floor plan of the site. One of the most important aspects is the level that transcends from the Ghat level to the temple area. It is almost a climb of 5 floors, which makes this transition very interesting and important. These are the site sections. While designing, care has been taken that the proposed buildings do not overpower the existing mandir. Section CC- passes through the museum and the Hriday Center, also highlighting the connecting bridge, which visually connects the ghats and the temple. This is the view of the ghat from the temple side. The entire campus is universally accessible. There are shaded areas through the campus for people to sit, relax, and enjoy the calmness of the space. The final stage was the post-design phase. This included crowd management and activating the design. To activate the design was a major milestone. This was achieved by designing not just individual spaces, but the in-between spaces as well. These spaces do not have just one specific function. They assist in smooth transitioning through the site. Another important aspect of the site was to bring order to the chaotic bazaar street. This has been achieved by providing shops of proper sizes and varied and to cater to varied clients. These spaces are an important part of the milieu of Kashi Vishwanath corridor in particular and Varanasi in general. The views display people, spaces, and the many perspectives. The views are a perfect example of how people are the soul of any design. This proposal is environmentally conscious by providing dustbins for waste disposal, public toilets, and rainwater harvesting systems. It promotes economic growth of the shop owners by providing appropriate spaces for all kinds of shops and hawkers. It stimulates social empathy by providing interaction spaces at many intervals through the site. Through the year, I developed an affinity towards the process of research. This affinity encouraged me to write research papers. I wrote 2 research papers that got me closer to heritage and Varanasi. The first paper talks about how architecture has an important role to play in promoting handicrafts and conserving them, while the second one highlights how river ghats play a vital role in creating the spiritual image of any place. This was my journey through the past year. After I graduated and moved to a new city for Masters in Urban Design, I realized that this part that I traveled through was just the beginning of my journey as an architect, a small milestone. This journey is a combination of small milestones and longer footsteps. To sum it up, I would like to quote Robert Frost once again. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.
how all these activities you created in Varanasi, where did you find that space? You have cleared up the buildings to make this?
Yes, ma'am. This is actually an ongoing proposal by.
This is what Bimal Patel has done, am I right?
Yes, ma'am. So what I have done is I have considered the site that they are using, and I have tried to portray my perspective on the proposal.
So it means in reality, all the buildings which are in that zone are getting demolished?
Yes, ma'am. They've already been demolished.
They've already been demolished. And you didn't see a problem with that? You are, you didn't see a problem. You're talking about heritage, ecological balance and ecology and memory and activities. It was, so I'm just wondering that, did it really make sense to remove so many buildings and just create this blank one site to put all this?
Ma'am, these buildings that already existed there were all residential buildings. And this area is actually a very important heritage destination for Hindus as well as Muslims and all other people who visit the Ghats. So the temple and the river were actually losing their importance due to the residential activities that were happening in this corridor. Hence, I think this is to rejuvenate this corridor and to give the lost importance of the temple and the river was very important, and
So
which is why I proposed this.
Sorry, I have a very basic question. How did the program come in? Because there was an urban fabric that was existing. There were residents who were using the space. What happened to them or their activities that gave the importance to the space? The people who were there already before?
Ma'am, the people who were already there were the residents of the city, and actually the people who owned the buildings had actually left the city, and they had given it out on rent, and so these people did not actually belong to Varanasi. Only the owners belong to Varanasi. So these people have been relocated now to a different place.
And how did you come up with the program? Like, it's just an act.
Is Bimal doing the same program?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so basically you have looked at Bimal's project and you have made it happen in your own way.
Yes, ma'am. It's my perspective to that.
How is it different from Bimal? What Bimal has done? Just
Yeah.
how different it is from what has actually happened at site, or it's proposed?
Ma'am, it is different. I feel that what they have proposed does not really give that importance to the temple which it deserves. They have tried to, the proposal that currently exists is kind of overpowering the temple and does not really blend in with the fabric of the city, is what I feel.
So if I may ask, is the fabric of the city important, or is the temple so important? Is one building so important that anyway you've destroyed the existing fabric of the city? Then what are we talking fabric of the city?
Yeah.
So, obviously you've taken a very controversial project, so don't worry. That's a, the whole country is divided in this project with their viewpoints. So that's not an issue, but you think about it. I think I'm frankly talking about my opinion that if we really need, is the temple and the connection of Ghat to temple so important that so many things had to be destroyed, and that is important, or all those activities could have been created somewhere else and another access could have been created from temple to the new activities, and the access of Ghat to temple could have been just made neater and cleaner and kept with some the buildings which people had already created some public activities within that.
Yeah.
Think about
That
it.
would have definitely been another perspective.
So, I think you maybe you want to, I'm just putting in another perspective, because looks like what was being done, you have taken it unquestionably. So that's I'm just saying, critical analysis of what are the other possibilities could have happened and why is where I think I would like you to think about.
Yeah, just understanding what went away, and could there be other ways of relooking at the whole idea of heritage? Heritage, what does it mean?
Maybe I could explain it by saying, like, I have tried to improve the experience for a tourist or a pilgrim visiting this site, and the spaces that have been designed also help the person to transition and understand Varanasi as it was. Like the museum, it talks about the history of the place, and then the Hriday Center is it helps in further research about how the place could be improved. And then there's a Dharamshala, which will help to which will house the people coming in the city. And also,
but you also want to think about that. Are the tourists so important that we forget about the residents who live in the city?
Yeah.
You can't design a city only for tourists. How your intervention affects the existing residents of the city. They live there 12 months, 365 days. Tourists come for 2 days. So what about the experience of the residents of this area?
And
what
then
for them?
Yeah, and the structure is abutting another house probably. What happens to those? The boundaries, the sides of your building.
Anyway, okay, thank you. I think let's move to the next.
Yes.
I think 43, you got a whole new perspective to looking at heritage. So you may leave the room now, and may I request 176 to come and start presenting. So I have requested you to, okay, start screen share.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. We can see your screen, go full screen, and then you can start presenting.
Okay. Good evening, jury members. I'm going to walk you down through my journey of my last year, my final year, through my thesis. And as a person, as a human being, as an architecture student, I quite enjoyed exploring how human perspectives and human views can change with different spaces. And with that philosophy in mind, I quite tried exploring my thesis project, because of which I took this opportunity to design a psychiatric hospital, come a society, come a campus, where a different outlook or a different kind of space can be reimagined for them. Starting of which, I would like to speak about the background crisis that I have analyzed. I have met many people in my life, and I have analyzed how difficult it is to go through mental health scenarios, and understanding their viewpoints have quite actually opened my mind up that as an architect, what kind of a role I have to play to create a beautiful space for them so that they can feel better, so that they can feel secured in their own surroundings. Mostly mental people, I'm sorry to use this term, the intellectually disabled people, they quite have gotten aloof from their surroundings. And my project aims to bring back their senses back into reality and make them much more habitable and much more enthusiastic in their daily lives like before. So speaking of which, as my background crisis, COVID has actually given lots of statistics where it has spurred the mental health scenario where losing jobs, losing family members, losing social contact with human beings with whom at least we could share our feelings and thoughts, that has distanced us, and that quite created a huge gap. So after the COVID scenario, how these things could have been, can actually implement or the design or architecture of a space where these things can be implemented. Speaking of which, I quite got into the case studies. I went through a lot of case studies where I found various multisensory environments being helpful in creating senses or nervous impulses amongst the users, amongst the mental patients. And that was quite interesting to me. And I went on further study of how I can implement this into architecture, with which I went ahead with my literature study and more of those works, where I got architect Johanni Pallasma's Eyes of the Skin book, where I actually got to know how spaces could be redesigned as sensory responsive architectural spaces where interaction can happen between human beings and nature. So from there, I took inspiration. Coming to my project, this is my site, and I have quite created the site zoning in a very simple way, keeping my mental health center, which is the hospital unit, in the middle, and distributing the ward complexes surrounding it, with the pet therapy area right beside the ward complexes, and a social awareness institute with a meditation hall, and the doctors and the staff headquarters and their habitable space, their residential complex. So this is my broad zoning of my site. And my site is at Newtown, Rajarhat Newtown, and it falls under health and institution zone. And it is a place where actually this place is getting built up. So this place has been allotted for health and institution area. Speaking of my concept, I would like to explain how I have identified different kinds of patients. Like there are hypoactive patients and hyperactive patients, and all how they can be treated. So I have used landscape, and I have actually tried bringing up landscape in between the modules, where I could actually make the people understand and utilize their own experiences with nature, because of which I got my therapy gardens all distributed amongst. Coming to my psychiatric ward complex, I have actually brought it down to children ward complex, elderly ward complex, adolescent ward complex. So seeing my zoning, here comes my children ward complex with sensory area, therapy gardens, workshop spaces, and motor skills park. This is my adolescent, because adolescent people go through a lot of depression, anxiety kind of illnesses, because of which they need to calm their minds down. That's why I've created certain hypotherapeutic gardens here with lots of aquatic animals and aquatic places where they could enjoy the peace and calm of nature and the ringing sound of water. And this is my elderly ward unit, where actually people who have in old age, where people have lost their memories, they could revive back their memories through restorative therapeutic gardens like horticultural therapeutic gardens. So I have tried placing those horticultural therapeutic gardens in between these ward complexes. And this is how I have arranged for my ward complexes. Coming to my module, I have actually tried exploring form of this pentagonal structure, because I could actually understand that just a rectilinear space wouldn't be enough to catch more amount of nature inside the rooms. So I wanted more amount of daylight because daylight influences a lot of neurotransmitters to act in the brain and make a person much more healthily functionable to their environment. So in order to induce that, I created 2 facades, which actually I would get in a pentagonal room layout, where I would get these 2 facades bringing me more amount of sunlight, and I could place my bed there. And this is my ward module design. Coming to my mental health center, this is actually the plan where I wanted people to experience different kinds of senses that Mr. Juhani Palasma has actually worked on in his sensory project, in his sensory architecture projects, where he speaks of how architecture could bring about certain visual sensations, acoustic sensations, tactile sensations, and also he speaks of bodily perception of a human being, of a space, and that is how one can actually interact with their spaces. So I tried creating different levels inside this particular plan, and I wanted to make this much more experience-wise rich, so that people can explore. This is my OPD units. This is my emergency ward with all courtyards and aquatic therapeutic gardens, and this is my snow island area. These are the sections. You can see how people can experience through different slow, gradual process of level changes. And this is my sensory therapeutic garden area with lots of visual sensory gaping walls and lots of visual experiences, lots of olfactory experiences through scented flowers, trees, and everything. And the most important thing is that why I used exposed brick surface, because brick can bring out beautiful brick bronze can actually bring out beautiful visual sensations, and as well as if we can touch, we can bring out beautiful tactile sensations. And it actually, brick facades actually highlights the landscape surrounding it, which is very much important for this project. And these are the sensory areas that I want, indoor sensory areas that I wanted to create for my snow island areas. Coming to my awareness and meditation block, this is my awareness block, where I have created OAT, family welfare clinics and workshop spaces, so that different kinds of people can actually come here and experience what kind of family trauma people might be going through, and NGOs can also help the society to bring back the different kinds of issues and address different kinds of issues and bring back social balance. This is how I tried to bring about the lively senses into architecture by creating small, very simple kind of project with just senses acting as a behavior. And I have used landscape as a device, and the built form would actually mediate this communication between man and his environment, which is probably lost in case of intellectually disabled people. I wanted to make them much more interactive with their surroundings through these processes and through these programs that I have given in my project. Thank you.
Well, exactly 10 minutes, and may I request the jury members to ask their questions.
So I have a question. So we looked at all the therapy gardens and everything else. What study went in to understand what type of architecture would suit such spaces, and how the spaces could have been more open for the inside to come, the outside and inside to interact?
Ma'am, I've actually tried creating such spaces where there would be an interaction between open public space as well as, as you can see, this is the view. This is the view from the emergency ward. So each time a person gets out from one particular zone, he finds a landscape area, a beautiful landscaped place can make a person calm and quiet. And that is something which I observed in my research papers also, that in the research papers that I studied regarding neuroscience, that how people can become calm and quiet seeing different places, and dark and gloomy spaces can make a person scared or make a person very much depressed, but a lit up place can make a person much more lively. So I've tried using daylight inside as much as possible, but at the same time, since they are acutely critically mental patients, so their movements should also be restricted with just the built form. But I do not want to restrict their thought processes. I do not want to restrict their movement inside the campus. That is why they can freely roam around. They can freely understand and perceive nature.
No, my question was kind of slightly different. I was like, how does the architectural form or the spaces reflect to their needs? Because you have an adolescent ward, you have an old age ward, you have a children's ward. How are they different? They all look similar because their needs. You only you were talking about hypo and the other.
Yes,
so how the form seems not to address that aspect of the disability.
Ma'am, actually I've chosen this I have studied and understood that for all the three types, the most important thing is that how much of nature and how much of sunlight they can perceive inside the room. So in order of that, I have taken this form of pentagonal.
I may interrupt. I think I want to cut it short and give my viewpoint, because I want to be maybe more blunt. So first thing, I think, I guess your idea that if the people who are going through the mental challenges, they need a little more sensitive environment. And I correct. You cannot, I mean, if you want to design for these people, actually, all of us have some mental issues. The normal common man is going through some mental issue or the other in common life. Maybe some people, it extends for them little more, but we all go through stress and this thing. So I would say a kind of architecture you're describing is not only for these people, it's for everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not only for them. Yes.
It's not only for them.
Palasma says it is for everybody. It is for everyone. Because as it is, we are so much in virtual, we want to bring people back to senses. Architecture has to bring people back to senses. Now, I completely agree with Preeti that all your blocks look same, and that really doesn't make sense to me. If you take such a strong pentagon form, it's very restrictive. And I completely do not agree with you that pentagon will bring in more light and ventilation and connection to outside than a rectangle. That's completely absurd. Sorry, I don't buy it. I don't want any explanation for it. Really, it's something you think about it, and really it won't. I mean, the other thing is yes, you describe the different kind of landscapes you have created for different age groups, but only landscape making different and making same block will not make like experience of these different age groups. I think you had to understand little more needs of different age groups and create architecture for them.
Yeah.
And you cannot give any excuse for creating the same block for everybody. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
Agreed. We that's it. I think that's.
Yeah, I was trying to ask.
Yeah. Preeti was being very, very polite. So the other thing is, if you look at your site plan, you have taken such a strong pentagon form, but you have orthogonal roads, then you have a circular thing, then you have a rectangular building, and you have something here. So, I mean, I am just thinking that suddenly pentagon is only for one room. But what happened to the office room and other rooms? Then you didn't need more light? Then you didn't need more ventilation, that you came back to rectangular spaces? So I don't know. And then if you really look at the spaces created around those pentagon, I mean, then the pentagon geometry should have been really explore to, give that different spaces in the site plan. Their site planning, you have come back to the same, like how everybody does a site plan and put a Pentagon building inside that. So that's, I think, I mean, I'm sorry for being so blunt, but yes.
Yeah, I agree.
So I hope 176, you have taken it all in positive ways and you will improve.
Yes,
ma'am. So thank you so much. You may leave the room. Now moving on to 31, already camera on and everything. You may start presenting.
Yeah. Good evening, one and all. Can you please let me know if the full screen is visible to you?
Please do full screen.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just start.
Yeah.
With the onset of COVID-19 in early 2020, migrant, the most ignored group our cities, came in the limelight due to the impact of lockdown. Due to urbanization, the nation witnessed a huge migration. Thus, this research investigates on certain topics like housing behavior pattern. Literature and life study was conducted through secondary and primary data. The process that went in for the research. Migration is majorly caused due to push and pull effect. And the migration in Surat is due to the textile and diamond industry, wherein majority of them came from Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. Socioeconomic condition plays a major role in migrants' life. And the primary framework decided for conducting the survey. And the survey findings came at different levels in terms of individual level, household level, community level, and at the society level. Also, the migrants' profile and living conditions was documented during the live study from different areas of the city. The results of various studies depicted that migrants' life in the city is dependent on multiple factors and are interlinked with one another. For example, psychological and economical factors plays a major role in migrants' life. Majority of the migrants do not bring their family during the migration, and most of them preferred walking for the work. And majority of them do not prefer to buy the houses. And in the city, they would stay for 1 to 5 years. Majority of them enjoyed a proper sanitation facility, whereas their bedroom conditions seem to be very small. And most of them have a cooking facilities with them. When you look at the maintenance cost factor, majority of them do not pay it. And majority of them felt the sense of security in their neighborhood. And worship places were the only common places for them, for community. And most of the migrants preferred living in the same community. And the architecture rating was very bad and poor. When you picturize a migrant's life in the city, this would be at certain stages. With the poor housing facility, the level of satisfaction and future aspirations of migrants to live in Surat seemed shattered. They build our cities, but they are not welcomed in it. चलती चक्की देखकर दिया कबीरा रोए, दो पाटन के बीच में साबुत बचाना कोई. India, a secular nation, witnesses a huge amount of violence due to intolerance towards one another. Well, then who will stop this human intolerance, terror in our country? The idea of India was to be a nation with unity in diversity. When we look at the communal violence that used to take place in past, but there were certain peacemakers as well. And one of them was Kabir. Yes, Kabir created a great impact during his time. Kabir was said to have born in Banaras and died in Maghar. But Kabir's philosophy are still alive, but lost somewhere in the chaos. Thus, this thesis envisions on Kabir's lost philosophy of peace and secularism. Looking at the intolerance among people, it creates an urgency to have an architecture space that can help people understand about the secularism. Kabir's philosophy of secularism and spirituality plays a major role in deriving the program. And the institution visions to conserve, learn, publish, and promote. Maghar, the site. Maghar is a small town located near Gorakhpur city. The heritage structures that are located in the city. Divided monuments of Kabir, Mazhar, and Samadhi is a symbol of Kabir's death, which had an ironical conclusion. Kabir's Gufa, where Kabir is said to have meditated in his last days. लोग कबीर को मानते हैं, लेकिन कोई कबीर की नहीं मानता है. Well, Kabir's philosophy can be a philosophy of any other person, but what made Kabir stand out from the crowd? Well, they were the events that take place in his life, which helped him develop certain philosophies. So in short, the visitors would understand the landmark events of Kabir's life, followed by his philosophy, from which they will understand and learn. The site acts as a backdrop to the Kabir Mazhar and Samadhi complex. The site condition. Master layout. The central idea is to have an experiential journey, a journey of awakening following the excess of fence of divided monument, to support which clusters of institution and other blocks will be there, and liminal spaces will be there as a connectors of spine and ancillary block. The starting point will have a symbolic structure which will generate curiosity in the viewers, whereas the end point will be a structure which will be framing the divided monument. The master layout, the institution is oriented in such a way that it is along the axis of Mazar and Samadhi complex, and the height is there with respect to the existing monument. The form derivation. First comes the line of awakening, and followed by which the geometry of ancillary block is decided. And then the joint comes in, followed by activity spaces, and thus the liminal spaces and architecture has been derived. The site layout. Site layout comprises of line of awakening, which is the main core of the institution, and supporting which the ancillary blocks. The line of awakening is also a subterranean structure. The nature of spaces is derived from the initial zoning exercises, and for the better navigation, the spaces are divided in terms of types of users. The line of awakening, the experiential journey space where visitors would experience 6 landmark events of Kabir's philosophy and his life associated with him. The process models. Well, the line of awakening comprises of various spaces as arranged in close sequence of carefully staged scenes, layered with narrative spaces with reference to Kabir's 6 landmark events and his philosophies. The narrative has been decided where people, what kind of feelings they're going to have. The construction, the architecture spaces would be sculpted by using the sacred soil of the site. The materiality and the texture is decided with respect to the spaces and its demands. Stage 1, early life. Here, the visitor will first understand in the gallery of contradiction, the feeling of contradiction, followed by which the person will enter into the display area, marking the start of the journey towards the enlightenment. Stage 2, the caste system. The experience of discrimination happens in the display area, wherein the person will understand about discrimination and feel that, and moving out of which they will enter into the gallery of equality, wherein there will be art installations. Stage 3, experience of frustration. Here the person will have a walk on the path of frustration, moving out of which they will enter into the space to reflect on their journey. In the stage 4, there will be an experience of controversy. Here, the person will first enter into the gallery, which will be depicting the disputes that Kabir too faced in his life, and followed by which they will enter into the space wherein they can express their feelings and have a dialogue. Stage 5, the experience of suffering. Here, the person will first enter into the theater of suffering, and this reflection area wherein they can reflect on their own journey. Stage 6, the last stage, the experience of discomfort. Here, initially, the person will enter into the dome of discomfort, and the excitement to move out will be leading them to the point from where they will see the disputed monuments, which will depict the irony of Kabir's philosophy and the existence today. The ancillary blocks. The workshop area will have spaces to have an art display related to Kabir's philosophies. Training area will comprise of music training and meditation center. The documentation and research spaces will be allotted in the institution block. The academy comprises of School of Philosophy and Performance. The liminal spaces. The existing duality can be directed towards oneness when people start looking beyond black and white, high and low. Thus, this liminal space promotes participation, interaction, anticipation, and performance. Thus, the oneness dwell. Here, the thematic landscape elements has been used with respect to Kabir's life and philosophy. बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा ना मिलिया कोई, जो मन खोजा आपड़ो, मुझसे बुरा ना कोई. It is very important in today's time to make people realize about the dying secularism. Thus, an architecture that would have a spiritual essence of Kabir. Through his poems, teachings, this project can help exemplify an optimistic and tolerant India in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for completing it just in time.
The jury permits, can I show my 1 year experience through the video?
You're done with your timing, but you can play that without the audio and Judy can give their comments and ask you questions.
Actually, it has the audio, but...
Okay, play it.
के रहीम नाम के आगे ईश्वर के हर नाम के आगे भक्तों के काफिर के आगे शून्य प्रथम आखिर के आगे हो खड़ा रे कबीर पहने अपनी गरीबी सीना ठोके छाड़ता है अपनी फकीरी दुनिया का भय नहीं बोले सच्ची बोली रे सीने का क्या कोई उससे खाली उसकी झोली रे बड़ी ताकत है गरीबी किसी व्यक्ति का नाम नहीं है यदि कबीर को हम किसी व्यक्ति की पूजा होगी कबीर की फोटो की पूजा नहीं कबीर के हृदय की पूजा जो हृदय में बसता रहा वो कबीर मेरे बंदे मैं तो तेरे पास दे मैं तो तेरे पास
Over to you, jury members.
Thank you so much.
Preeti, you want to start?
So you go ahead.
Okay. So I think I really appreciate your two interests you put in with the idea of migrant labor and the most happening thing in our country is about secularism and all that. So I think, and then from secularism, how you connected, went to Kabir, and Kabir as one person you identified where you thought that if that is projected, we can propagate the idea of secularism. I think that's also maybe very good. And I mean, I really appreciate that, how you connected it and how you have studied Kabir and the kind of dohas you brought on. I think very nice. And then you've come up with this idea of Institute of Peace and Secular Studies, where with these certain elements, what you created and you described, I like the concept, what you created. Though I didn't, my question was, is the migrant labor idea is not really connected to your thesis, right? That's just a study.
Yeah, it's so that was my first semester project, like of the final year.
Correct. So that was one, and then your idea of security.
The process in.
Yeah, just a process. Right? No, agreed. I mean, I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah, it was a different.
And I also, I think the way you've done these exhibition spaces and everything, and how you described, and even how your sheets were, I thought they were very nicely put. I liked the little bit of folk art, what you did, which is how to present it, of presentation of your drawings, and how you did, which had a little folkish thing to it, which kind of connected to Kabir. the thing which I think you have chosen multiple geometric forms and tried to create this experience with connection of these multiple geometry forms. My one question is why? Why have you done that? What was the reason of taking this? Is it like that literal idea that we are all different people represented by different multiple geometries, and how we can, I don't know. I want to understand your thoughts on that. And yeah.
Okay, now you go on.
No. So yes, and then I felt it. So go ahead. First you explain, then I'll explain you the challenge in that.
So there was a whole process that went in, wherein first I was understanding the philosophy, and the experiential part came in the picture, and then the different geometries came in. So the entire derivation of the form started with understanding of different stages, and as and when different stages and the different experiences came in, because of the different experiences, I decided to go with different geometries so that the people standing at a particular location in the institute will experience something different at different locations. And thus,
I'm trying to understand your concept, the different space, the different form. Was there an idea of, is it representing something?
No, so it was completely based on my exercise on geometry and my exercise on understanding the different philosophies and different experiences that one will have.
Okay, so if one looks at it that way, where you decided the plural personality of every human being, you wanted to put it into these different geometry forms, maybe that's one way to explore that idea. And I think some places you have succeeded, but some places I felt it did create, it just, you had more time, you could have resolved it better. It just did create, the thing is, it needs more time and it needs more resolution when you do that, to make sure that though it's different, but still every space is beautiful and you don't get these odd spaces. So I think that's my only a comment, but overall I really liked what you presented.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree. I like what you presented. The only thing is that subterranean and the above is not very much. There's no clarity between those two, like what's subterranean and what's not. But overall, from the concept to what you've shown is an amazing journey.
Thank you so much. So, ma'am, for the subterranean part, so that was the whole exercise that went in. So the experiential journey portion of the institute. So over here, since every space would have a smaller niches and smaller theaters, or maybe a zone to reflect or something, so that is why the spaces would go down and some would go up. And plus I had it was a game rule that no structure would be above the monumental structure, so I cannot move that limit as well. So it was a play of both the things.
Nice. And is there a connect to the other two structures that are present on the other side of your site?
Yes. So in terms of height, orientation, scale, and in terms of the overall, from all the liminal spaces, you can view the divided monument. Okay. Yeah. And at the end of the journey, from there will be a frame that would, depict this two portion, which is the
can see it.
Yeah.
Must have missed it earlier. Yeah.
But I think good work. Yeah. But the food for thought is that, do you really think one center like this will change the attitude of the whole country to make from what's happening today?
This is just a seed.
I'm sure that is what has hit you and you have come up with this. But as architects, can one, just making one building will we be able to achieve what we want to do? I think we need something more to change that thing. As architects, we can only do one building, but really to change the environment of our country and the attitude towards secularism, we need something more mass media.
maybe we can consider this building either as a symbolic structure of the nation, or we can consider this as a seed project.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nice work, 31. Now you may leave the room and let's move on to 83. I hope Team NASA 35 is lined up before we finish with 83. Thank you, 31. You may leave the room. '83, are you ready?
Yes. I cannot start my video. Could you permit it?
Can you now?
Okay. Okay. Am I audible?
You are audible.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, all. I'm constantly amazed by the marvels created by humans and nature, particularly in architecture and art. I'm constantly linked to the way termites construct their underground castles with the pressure spool system, the way beavers construct dams across risky flowing streams. Humans have thrived all other creatures in nature and evolved into a supreme power above all others, to the point where even the fate of this nature is in our hands. We always barge into nature and our haste to advance. We never stop to consider the rest of our living beings. As an architect, I believe I have enormous power to shape the world for future generations. This world, in my vision, is not just for humans, but also for the Earth's other living partners. As the superior creature on this planet, I dream of creating a world in which all living things coexist peacefully and in symbiosis. So, moving on to my thesis project. Okay. So most of us are been living in urban areas. We are very well aware about how cities and towns contribute to the growing economy. So as we all know, urbanization has a positive and negative impact. Growing economy and urbanization leads to reckless deforestation, which have been wiping out the trees and jungles where birds, human, animals once lived together. Okay, so moving to the aim of my project. The aim of the project is to design a vertical forest in the urban core, which could act as a home for birds and animals, a park for bird watchers, and an ornithology center for scientists and students. Following the objective of my project. So moving on to the topic, urbanization as a worldwide phenomenon. Our planet is urbanizing rapidly. As an urban dwelling human population is growing 1 million per week nowadays, the pace of urbanization is illustrated in the figure showing a global, this illustration has shown a global outlook of urbanization from 1950 to 2025. And India has the same situation. As it is a developing country, we have a growing population and also with expanding urbanization. So the figure showing urbanization in India from 1950 to 2025. So these are the data I have collected about the impact of urbanization and the deforestation. So moving on to the vital topic of this project, urbanization and birds. During the process of urbanization, some animal species, especially birds, will disappear from the newly urbanized habitat. For example, birds that feed on specific natural food, so it will fly to other areas in search of food. And species that cannot survive, move as far as urbanization will disappear. But parallel to this, some birds will thrive, and such as crows and doves will move into the city or increase in density. Thus, urbanization also filters bird community. So urbanization have a terrible impact on bird species. So I have shown different data over there about how it affects how the urbanization, urban heat island affect the birds and all. So why birds matter? As we all know, birds play a major role in our culture, religion, economy, and ecology as well. Birds are the agents of dispersal. Birds are the insect exterminators. Birds are the bioindicators. Birds play a major role in our food chain. So moving on to another topic. So let me explain about the issues faced by urban birds.
Can you just move on? I have one question. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any other project in the world like this? Where?
No,
Where is it?
It's not an aviary. this is an this is like a vertical bird sanctuary. I couldn't find any project directly related to this, ma'am.
So there is no project like this in the world.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So can you now move to your project?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm also discussing about another topic, bird watching. So what is bird watching? Bird watching is defined as a hobby in which individuals enjoy challenge of bird study, listing out bird, their general activities, and this include identifying birds for knowledge sharing and intellectual exposure around the community of birders. So according to National Survey of Fisheries and Hunting Wildlife Associated Recreation, bird watching is the fastest growing recreational pursuit internationally. So graphs showing number of bird watchers worldwide. Okay. So I explained about the issues faced by birds. I explained about the urbanization. So this following are my design consideration for this project. First one is urban birds habitat retention, increase species richness and green ecosystem in cities, creating a redefined bird watching experience for bird lovers. So here is a solution for all these issues. Introducing avian park. This is an avian park is an hypothetical redefined vertical forest which could be built in any city center, which act as a bird sanctuary and a research center. This is a vertical forest. Avian park is a research center. Avian park is a bird sanctuary. Avian park is an oxygen tower. Avian park is the place where humans and birds meet. So for supporting this project, I have done several case studies. I have done some case studies. Being an hypothetical project, case studies are taken based on different aspects to support this project. So these projects have three components: one vertical forest, the second one the research center, third one the bird sanctuary or the exhibition park. So Bosco Vertical, for the vertical forest, I have done the project Bosco Vertical in Milan. This is an apartment project which hold 13,000 plants across 90+ species. And I have done another case study for the research center, that is Secon Coimbatore, that is for Salim Ali Center for Ornithology. This project is done to get the collect data about the research center and all. So the next project is the Wasit Nature Reserve and Wetlands in Sharjah, UAE. This is a great example of how to revive a dam or wasteland into a greener space. So moving on to the site selection. So avian park is a paradigm building concept that could be adopted in big cities to bring back birds and nature, and that could merge with human lives. This project is feasible in the city with the following features: the cities with the less pollution spilling factories, the cities with water bodies and small green patches at least, the cities without extreme climatic condition, the cities where have large number of bird enthusiasts and bird watching organization. The city once had a green surrounding with local vegetation and birds and different due to urbanization. So I have looked into many major cities in the country. So I have opted Bangalore for this project. The reason is water bodies attract more birds. Bangalore is the city of 1,000 lakes, but currently Bangalore has only 250 or something lakes. Bird prefers city with less factories. Bangalore is a garden city of India. Bangalore enormous bird watchers and bird lovers. Bangalore has a lot of bird watching clubs and organizations. So moving on to the site. So the site should be near to the lake, so it can attract birds easily. So I have chosen the Alsu Lake, one of the major lakes in Bangalore. So I have chosen the site near the Alsu Lake. So you can see in the site context, most of the surroundings are defense zone and residential zone, and also some little bit commercial zone. So this is the overall context of the site. The magnet. This site act as a magnet. Also, lake is situated at the central core of Bangalore city in a zone where have several green patches and lakes within 10-kilometer radius. This could attract more birds towards the lakes and act as a green corridor for birds all around. Creating a vertical green tower with enormous trees that could accommodate these avian species will also attract people from all over the country to experience bird watching. Overall, this site could attract humans and birds and create an ecosystem that benefit both. So moving on to the site detail, this is the site located near, and at the left side we have the Alsu Lake. This is 4.8-acre land. This is a wasteland. Actually, currently I have shown some physical factors here. This is saving a wasteland. Currently, there have some dhobies or washermen who used to wash their clothes. The problem is within this, they eject or spill all the wastewater directly into the lake. So government already taken action to revive the ground. So following at the strength, it has a cool microclimate. So moving on to the design, this is the concept. So this is the concept of this project. As is the name of this, is the combination of synthesis means the combination of components or elements to form a connected whole. AUM Park is a catalyst project which can support a green environment in cities. Okay. In a nutshell, overall aim of this project is to combine vegetation, humans, and birds to create a balanced ecosystem. So moving on to the design development, I have taken the setback and I have like setback space allotted for parks and trees.
No. So can you? I think you don't have much time. Can you just tell me in all these building you have created for the birds? What are the different spaces you have created?
Okay, ma'am. Moving on to
just explain why you have created these different spaces. What for the birds in this building?
So, actually, I'm skipping this part, directly moving to the. So we have. I will show the section here. So this is all about merging humans, birds together. So according to my study, I have studied about top 15 bird species in Bangalore, about their especially about their interaction with human. So we have birds that very interact with human, which are not at all interact with human. So space are decided accordingly. At the ground base part, we have all the research center, accommodation block, piazza, lobby, etc., and service core shared nearby. So at vertical side, we have observatory above. So this observatory connected with several tracks. So bird watchers can.
So you have observatory. So what different kinds of birds live on different floors?
Yes, ma'am. So moving to portion. So I have shown here different strata for birds. So this is basically sanctuary, but I am explaining the sanctuary. So we have different kind of birds: aquatic birds, like rail birds, wading birds.
No. I am trying to understand where will you catch this bird and which floor will you put in?
Okay, ma'am. So I told you we have aquatic birds, rail birds. We each have different strata in atmosphere. So this is not an aviary. This is the place. This is basically a forest that can attract birds. That's all. So for the wading,
sorry. I would like to cut short there. Now you are putting one building in the middle of the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is just because it has trees all over and looks green. Will it attract birds from wherever, all over? This is like heart of the city. How will birds reach by here themselves? How do they know? Oh, this green building is created for me and I have to go inside in this floor.
Okay, ma'am. So I have studied about the requirement of the birds, how to give like a recreational purpose. So we already have lake there. So lake already has the potential to attract.
So why Alsur Lake doesn't have birds coming in now? Why do I need to create this building? I'm actually questioning the whole premise of this project. And like I asked you, is there any building in the world like this? So the question here is if I really want to do interaction between human beings and birds, do I really need to create a building, or do I just need to create an environment outside the city where this interaction could happen? Close to Bangalore, little away. Why do I have to do this in the center of the city by creating a building?
Because the problem, because it's all about the site map. I told you, the Alsur Lake already has some bird species.
There are 1,000 lakes in Bangalore.
Yeah. And you were talking about, so you were talking about dhobies here. You could have done something for them and redone the site so that it didn't, like, why have a new program come in when it's not performing or doing what it's supposed to do? Because see, even you may know that there are birds which prey on others. Why would all these birds even come together?
And the birds are, they have a season. I'm sure you've done enough study on birds. They'll go, they'll come, they'll do all that. They come,
migrate.
They migrate. They go to a sanctuary because of certain reason. They need natural environment. Do we really need to create a building for them?
Yeah, why not, ma'am? Actually,
why not?
Yes,
first question is why?
Why? Yeah.
We in cities we have already less spaces, right? So we created due to the lack of spaces for creating residence zone, we humans create a vertical apartment. In that case,
human needs to live in the city because their work is in the city. So I need to create spaces for humans in the city. Birds don't need to live in the city. You are putting them in a cage in a city. They are not interested in coming here.
Ma'am, here comes my point. In cities, I have categorized bird city too, native birds and urban birds. So that initially, due to the time limit, I haven't explained. I'm
sorry. 20 years ago, where there were no mobile phones, there were urban birds. After mobile phones, there are no urban birds. Mobile cell network has removed all the birds from the city. I, as a child, used to hear bird chirping in the morning. I live in Bangalore. My house is next to a forest. I hardly hear a bird chirping. Okay, so I think you really need, that's why I asked you, is there a project? So I don't know. I think I have a problem with the premise of this project.
That's the reason why I opted the Ulsur, ma'am. Ulsur has already 200 species of bird. So probably
they're already coming there. So you could have probably got to sell this if this was prime city in the center, but I still don't understand why birds would come. Because they're not coming, not because there's no space, but there's no ecosystem.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Actually, according to my study, why the birds numbers in Bangalore decline only because of due to the altered local meteorological condition and also due to ecological light pollution, some noise pollution, roads and buildings. So they have no space to there is no space for food, there is no space for breeding and etc. So Ulsur has already have water content which can attract birds. But what if we provide a kind of a vegetation or a sanctuary near to Ulsur Lake? Then the birds already is attracted, so it can attract more birds, and we can provide.
But it doesn't feel like a building. It has more human. It has more human program, any which way. So why does a building need?
I'm sorry. Whatever you say, I am not buying this. I don't want to go to a building to interact with birds. I would like to go out in nature and interact with birds, where birds are happy being part of a lake. So I think this is not going to, the whole idea of going and meeting birds will be going away from the city. There is peace, there is quiet, there is bloody traffic noise on Ulsur Lake around. And if you make a building like this, sorry, I cannot enjoy the birds.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, that's why at the offset area I have planted a lot of trees.
No, sorry, it doesn't work. I'm really sorry, it doesn't work. Preeti, I think that's my final word.
Yeah. I know. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we move on to the next?
Yeah, please.
83, you may leave the room. 35, ready?
Yes, I will share my screen.
Yeah.
What's your number? I'm sorry.
35.
35.
35. Okay.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so I will. Okay, good evening all. So one radical idea of organizing and laying down of stones back in prehistoric time led to the beginning of human civilization and since then evolving. So while investigating into the history, I had analyzed the idea behind the shelter and how it has changed into substandard housing approach. The organized mass housing has an expression of army barracks, which can be observed in Europe, and the same followed in India as well. So in India, it evolved in form of cantonment and public housing schemes also. But today, Habitat for Humanity reports that about 1.6 billion people live in inadequate shelter. So while mapping the post-independence housing strategies, rural housing was never a priority, although it constitutes the major housing portion of the India. And it led to me a very important question: how far the organized mass housing approach has been able to improve the substandard housing conditions in rural India. The statistics and reports clearly indicates that it has failed to provide the adequate housing in the country. This graphic depicts the present approach towards the problem by solving it under the vision of housing for all, and which still is not found to be efficient. So while conducting the post-occupancy evaluation of the different housing schemes based on diverse parameters, it was clear that it just meets the legal standards, but not the people's aspirations or their actual needs. So there are three housing schemes. Indira Awas Yojana, Sardar Awas Yojana, and Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana was studied in detail, and it was documented and analyzed to understand how such schemes has evolved, and since it's constructed at settlement as well as individual dwelling level. So if you observe, most of the houses have expanded in all directions with no space left now with irregular expansions. The material and technique adopted is completely different from the core house. due to lack of local craftsmanship. And even in the present PMAY Grameen houses, there is still no consideration of design respecting the context in the local climate. So based on survey analysis, it is clear that the communities are still unable to have access to adequate shelter. So I mapped out all the issues into different aspects based on what was observed and what needs to be an ideal condition on inferences. So if you see site location in all sites, they are all isolated from the village center or the infrastructure services also. And several other aspects are not taken into consideration. It is just replicated as factory-made houses. So from the inquiry, I tried to develop few recommendations and viable approach towards the adequate housing crisis. So in the end, it's like I would say that communities know what they need and they just need an opportunity to participate in design and not be treated as beneficiaries. So the lessons learned from research led me towards my design project based on participatory housing approach for conservation-induced displacement. It is a case of Siddhi community of Uttar Kannada, Karnataka area. Human-wildlife interdependency is a key to the existence of human life. Once in a fragmented wildlife habitat, one of the elephant asks the villager, "What are you doing on our land?" And to its response, one of the villager asks the same question back, "What are you doing on our land?" And then the lion response says, "I just updated my Google map recently. It used to be forest here." So the question of who actually owns the land leads to human-wildlife conflict, depending on three dimensions: pressure and level of exposure and potential interaction, which becomes the conflict. Karnataka is a biodiversity hotspot, but also a conflict zone. Kali Tiger Reserve is one of them. By mapping wildlife corridors, vulnerable settlements prone to such conflict are identified. And 4 major communities are vulnerable to conflict, and Siddhi is selected as a case, who are an ethnic community that arrived from East Africa. From merchants to slaves, they are left behind as legacy of colonization after abolition of slave trade. So does India remember its only African tribe? They remain forgotten in history. And few vulnerable Siddhi settlements are identified, and by comparative analysis, Gadoli is selected for the study area. It was identified that more than 70% of the settlement is under encroachment as per Revenue and Forest Department. And in documentation, 6 major typologies are studied to understand their perception of house, and the traditional and contemporary construction method was analyzed to understand the local craftsmanship and the available resources. The issues based on various capitals indicate that the community is exposed to severe losses and damages as it competes with wildlife for limited resources. A holistic sustainable development is a need to make win-win situation for both human and wildlife. In my opinion, every case of human-wildlife conflict is unique. Understanding the human-wildlife interaction theory, depletion of wildlife is not an appropriate solution. In the contradictory perspectives of coexistence versus separation, I think both aspects are to be considered at different levels. That is, to balance coexistence at regional level and separation at local level for integrated conservation development project. Now the question comes, why such projects often fail to create coexistence between different entities? On research, major issues which were identified: lack of collaborative practices, community exclusion in the process, and lack of efficient strategies. Most importantly, the architect is not involved. So for that, first of all, we need to reverse the current top-down approach into a bottom-up approach where the community is a leader in the decision-making process rather than just a spectator. And the approach for the project is divided into 4 major factors: participatory approach, incremental, material and construction, and site and services approach. So first, I had a workshop with the community with a local Siddhi NGO and to understand their perception and evolve various patterns for the design process. So based on participation, 3 potential sites were identified, and after several analysis, Hosur is most preferred site considering technical as well as socio-cultural aspects of community. Suitable settlement spot is identified by understanding several layers of topography, buffer zones, climate, farmlands and watershed mapping, etc. And the most preferred location is intermediate level between forest and agricultural land, which is inspired from the existing settlement patterns. The challenge here is to prevent future encroachments, self-help construction, and existing house form adaptations with the incremental nature of dwelling. So understanding the diversity in existing houses, the idea was to have 6 parent typologies with internal indefinite variations to retain that diversity. The 2 settlements are linked with a primary road and a lake to allow water retention for self-sustaining habitat. and Gardoli is designed for the initial stage, while separate land is allocated for the Vada settlement with additional reserved land for future expansion. So now, as per analysis, the traditional settlement pattern of small clusters changed to linear formations by administrative boundaries. So idea was to evolve amalgamation of both the patterns to cluster around a central core with a tree known as Kata in the local language. The settlement is distributed along the topography with biofencing as a buffer edge, which is inspired from the vernacular settlements to avoid undesirable expansion and prevent future conflicts. The supportive amenities are decentralized, which will generate various activity nodes throughout the settlement. The 3D visuals expresses the different characters of the proposed settlement, which is also inspired from the existing settlements. The cluster is designed based on typology mixing and connecting the backyards. And the central court acts as a space which will solve community disputes, perform traditional dance or rituals, and celebrate different festivals. Now, the city house, which has evolved in various geometries as a continuous process, adapting to changing times. The proposed core house design is based on designing Mojga, which is a private area, comprises 20% of space and rest, allowing users to take control over it with necessary support services. Foundation is from locally available stone and used in existing houses, and mud bricks are replaced with CSCB blocks for better stability as red soil is available. For roof alternative to timber, bamboo is adopted, which will reduce dependence on forest timber. The proposed core house allows user to decide how much to build, when to build, and what to build for all 6 typologies. So in implementation stages, the user will decide the appearance of the house to establish his house identity, which will allow diversity in future adaptations. So for instance, in type 1, different combinations are possible and few of them are shown here. And one of the options shown how it will be expressed after implementation. So it is the user who will decide the functionality of each space and completes the full house over a period of time, depending on their needs and aspiration. Because the perception of home by each one is not fixed and static, but it is instead fluid and multiple, which alters and changes with lifestyle and time. So all different typologies have indefinite combinations at diverse stages of implementation based on users' needs. So a house is a home when in its making, it is not the machine, but the hands of the man which have worked upon in it. So I would say it is a communal art which is not produced by few intellectuals, but by spontaneous participation and experience of the whole community under a common heritage to coexist in this ecosystem. And architecture in the 21st century will be continuously evolving. So let's participate and innovate to pioneer the future, which is inspired from the past at the grassroots level. Thank you.
Well done, 35, bang on time. Now moving on to the Q&A session.
I think a very good study of the whole idea of mass housing, what you have done and looked at the issues, what are there with the idea of participatory design, which is possible, and what you've done. I have let's say, which architects similar housing did you study? I'm just like, which are the projects you looked at who have done something like this?
I have studied Yatin Pandya's house in Bhuj, which he has done based on participation full. And I also studied few Alejandro Aravina's housing, how he...
Alejandro Aravena, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I think, right, I wanted to talk about Alejandro Aravena, that's why I asked. Now, if you look at those projects, the only thing I'm looking at it is what you've come up. It seems little idealistic to me. I think if it happens, it's really good. But what did you look at the reasons why these things don't happen? What I meant is now who's giving the land for this? Who's paying for this, housing which is going to happen? So basically, the way things work out is because you identified the land, they're looking at it, but actually in reality, some government has to give that land for that community, right? And I mean, you have to get that land. So now what happens is the land given will not be in proportion to the number of people who get to be housed. So it becomes very difficult to do an housing like this, which is so spread out and single thing. And that is why even if Alejandro Aravana did, he made very small houses with, you know, like G+1 and whatever thing, because it is finally the number of people you can give in a certain real estate. It comes to that. So how I want to understand how you looked at that this kind of housing in what land for how many people?
So ma'am, like I have followed one integrated wildlife. There is a scheme which provides the community during the resettlement stage. So whatever the land they had right now in the forest area, which was around 280 hectares, both the settlements plus agricultural land, farmlands. So I have tried that similar area is given to them in this, because in compensation, they are given more, like everyone will get the settlement rights for land as well as for the farmland. While right now the case is like only 20 or 30% of the space is like given to them as a in form of settlement of rights, while 70% is like they have encroached, or like what we could say, like they have expanded without any like there is no records in the revenue department. So this process will actually help both the conservation of the forest and the wildlife, as well as the community will get their own right. And there is like they get around 10 lakhs per family for this under this scheme. So in that like I did some basic calculations. So based on that if this compensation is given full to all the families, then it can be we can take this land and develop a house. And even I thought that if this comes, then they will economically they will come up and they can even participate in conserving those areas which are the core wildlife zones. So they are the one who knows better. So they will also be helping the areas which by themselves they have taken over and started agriculture. So they will be the one who will again bring back those much needed ecosystem in that area.
I mean, you mean to say what land they had somewhere, they'll be given the exactly same land near a city? I have my doubts on that.
It is not near the city, but I have just like along the buffer edge, which will be like away from the main core areas of potential areas of conflict.
Okay.
Preeti, you can ask.
I like the whole process, the way you've gone about the understanding the potentials, how they stay, how they expand and go on creating. But I also have the same problem that it's too idealistic. It may not be really possible, because who is like I will put the same question a little differently that architect Dimple put forward is, how is the plotting done? Because there's some sense of plotting for every house. That's what I think.
Ma'am, I have categorized them like based on, I will show one slide, like on household size, their household incomes, and also existing how much land they have. So on that basis only, I have like if a person is having like around 40 to 80 meters square. So in that, like when he upgrades into a new house, so he will be given a core house and an extension will be done by him. So like the existing what PMMI houses they give, so certain ratios have been taken similar way in this also.
Okay.
Means the new house is based on the existing house what they had?
Yeah, so whatever houses, like if suppose you are in the category B of 80 to 120 houses and you have a family of 6 to 9 or 2 to 5. So based on that, you will be given a plot and a house, and future expansions will be included in that. So right now at each stage, they will be given core house because government will also fund. But the expansions will be done by the community as per their economic, social status. So government is not going to provide them the whole house, which is right now the scene. They provide full 25 meters square full house, and there is no thought about the incremental nature, which I found from my case study very important factor.
Okay. It's the other, I mean, I think, and one more comment I had was, when I look at your housing, somehow I didn't find the hierarchical spaces. It looks all like maybe the hierarchy is only from very minute to very small. Like it's almost like there is like small village in this whole community. There are like maybe so many villages put together, but overall there is not like for the whole community. I don't know. I didn't see any larger public space or something like that.
Ma'am, like it's like all the spaces of public have been decentralized after in between each cluster level. So like there is main primary road, then secondary, which leads to individual cluster, and after that it will be towards smaller clusters. Like so, this is the main primary road. So after that, you will have certain lines which go towards fields, and then you can enter into these different clusters and like that. So that is hierarchy I have tried.
No, so I agree that you need smaller community spaces, but when you're creating a thing for such a large community, there is also a space needed, which is where more people can gather. Otherwise, I can only gather with my 10 houses around me. No,
yes,
I also, I mean, you're creating for a community. So you want festivals to happen. You want to create one. I mean, any village you study, you will have a temple and you have a chopal, you have a maidan, you have a thing, and then you have cluster of houses with individual spaces. So I think
that, I don't know, I might be mistaken. Is this church and community hall and all that designed by you, or
like
that's gone?
Christianity, so they, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but what it means is there is really no like a larger space created around it for people to gather in large numbers. So, I mean, it looks everything is so same scale in that sense.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I think, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that was the last presentation, Priyanka, right?
Yes, that was the last presentation.
Okay. So 35, thank you. You can leave